All right. Happy Sunday night. It is time for another episode of Conservatism on Tap. Hey, John, it's good to see you, man. I am just happy to be alive. So, and I'm
I bet you
happy to be
are.
on this show. So, it's been a couple weeks. I mean, I remember you were sick a few weeks ago and had to get COVID tested. We talked about that. And then Hurricane Sally hit and pretty much destroyed, the towns that I hold dear, just about an hour away from us. We had that hit and just, I mean, so much rain, man. It was just absolutely crazy.
Right.
And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to have made it through that hurricane. But how are you doing, John? How have you been?
Man, I'm actually just worried about you. We're doing fine. It's comfortable weather over here. House is doing good. How much rain did y'all get?
Man, it was insane. So I want to show you. I've got some pictures here that I
Okay.
brought. So the first one here is you can see that's our backyard. So we've got a little playground for the kids, and you can
Man.
see just the amount of water. That's over 2 feet, and that
Oh
was
my God.
halfway through that. Yeah, so you can't see the ground at all. You can see it coming up on that slide, and it just kept rising. And then this second picture is our backyard. We've got a pool back there, but it turned into a lake,
Oh
like a dirty
gosh.
pond. As you can see, just the water turning to like green and
Ah, jeez.
brown, and then there's all this groundwater that went in there. I mean, we tried to drain it before it happened, and I mean, it was just insane how much water we had in that pool. Man, it was wild, and so you can see the fence is starting to like bow in there, and so we're looking at insurance claims for all that. But I feel like we're lucky, because we made it through okay. Insurance is going to cover that stuff, I
That's
hope.
good.
But I've
That's
been
good.
working pretty much every day this week. Almost nobody went to work because the roads were so bad and everything was closed down, power was out. And so I've been over at friends' houses working with our church, just trying to help people. Some people had the roofs taken off. You had
I was
steeple.
gonna ask about the neighbors, actually. Yeah,
You had
especially.
it was crazy. You had barges that got rammed into bridges that took down, what we call 3 Mile Bridge close to Pensacola. I mean, just absolutely nuts. Like the chaos that's been happening. But fortunately, I'm not aware of anybody, at least locally here, that was seriously injured. Because we kind of knew it was coming, and then it did
Hmm.
eastward at the last second, and people were getting into their homes. We spent the night in a closet, but just the amount of water was insane, and the beaches
Hmm.
and all that. So it's going to be months, if not years, to really repair everything. So to that,
Yeah.
there's a beer that I've been saving for a day like today, and I don't know how your French is, but this is called La Fin du Monde, which is French for the end of the world.
Oh, nice.
This is a Belgian style triple ale that I'm going to be having tonight, and it somehow survived. We had a generator that we set up after we had
Oh,
lost
nice.
power for about a day, and I was able to save the beer, most of the the groceries and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, today is that day. Today is La Fin du Monde Day. So I'm going to be toasting you with that tonight as we go through the show. How about you? What do you got to drink?
Dude, I don't have anything related to the end of the world like that. If anything, it was more about trying to celebrate the fall. And it was just yesterday that the weather started to get much cooler in a way that was just crisp. I started craving pumpkin everything, but did not get a pumpkin ale or anything like that. I went for the tiramisu. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a
Oh man,
tiramisu
look at
stout. It is
oh
a raspberry accented beer.
oh man.
It's at 9%. So it's of a decent power level, in my opinion. But you don't taste the alcohol in it at all. It is heavier on the raspberry.
Uh huh.
It's not carbonated. It's more of like a nitro smooth,
Yeah.
creamy stout. So it is very, very tasty and a good way to, I think, start celebrating the dark beer season.
Yeah,
So happy
like I
fall.
can't wait to get there. Once I survive the end of the world, like maybe I can have a nice like sweet beer and enjoy some porters and all that stuff.
It's
Um,
locally brewed.
yeah.
It's Steamboat Brewery. It's within about 5 miles of my house.
Oh
They
wow.
started their brewery about 2years ago, and it's been the only brewery in Chesterfield, and it has just skyrocketed up. So they're starting to make the markets all around, and tiramisu was like their flagship. And I was happy because it's not often you see a Richmond Metro brewery their flagship be a stout or a porter or anything dark.
Yeah.
It's usually IPA around here, so it's number one in my book
So that's
for
helping you
sure.
get through 2020. I mean, that's I feel like, we're having this show once a week. We could probably have it every day now and just like start racking up the drinking because it's we're just trying at this point to get back into a routine. In Pensacola, there's still a whole bunch of homes without power, schools without power, that kind of stuff. Fortunately, where I
Yeah.
live, about an hour away, we're starting to get back into that normal, routine, normal like lifestyle. And so I can't wait. I can't wait for fall. Can't wait for Halloween, and then hopefully, some type of end to this coronavirus. Hopefully a vaccine on its way, that type of thing, and really,
Yeah.
getting through how political it's been. So, some good things coming as 2020 draws to a close, I hope, and then I hope
So
2021 starts to go back to a normal way of life. I know we all need it. But so what I want to talk about tonight is something else that was really unfortunate that happened, and I'm going to bring up some images today. Is we're
okay.
talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died this week. Is really really unfortunate, but something that I think we all kind of knew that was coming pretty soon. I believe she was about 87, and you can
Mm,
see there that there's a couple pictures of her, and I want to go through kind of who she was because I mean this was someone who was definitely on the left, definitely a hard liberal,
right.
and yet someone that was very much respected. And we're going to look at that tonight real quickly of just how many people, whether they are conservative or liberal or moderate, have come out and kind of like shared their sympathy for the family and talked about who she was. So let's go
Hmm.
through that real quick, John. I'm going to go through just a couple
Sounds good.
her biography, and then I'm going to get your reaction to it. If you didn't know much about her, I mean, I think everybody knows that she was on the Supreme Court, but I mean, this woman was just a firebrand and a champion, for really women everywhere. Just a brilliant mind. She was the first in her class at Columbia Law School and an
Hmm.
attorney for the ACLU. And then in 1993 is when she got her chance to be on the Supreme Court. And she was only the second woman after Sandra Day O'Connor to be nominated and then confirmed for the Supreme Courts. And then she
Hmm.
was on it as the only woman for a pretty long stretch of time after Sandra Day O'Connor left. And so
Yeah.
a couple cases that she's really famous for where she wrote the opinion for the court. One is US v. Virginia, which was really about the Virginia Military Institute, which is a college, obviously,
Hmm.
in Virginia. You're familiar with it, just down the street from you. But they essentially had a male only admissions policy, and she wrote the opinion for the court. As they struck that down, they allowed women to enter military colleges, including VMI. Another case was Homestead
Awesome.
versus LC, which was talking about the right for people with mental disabilities to live in a community rather than be forced to stay in an institution. And it really came down to if doctors and specialists say that a person could do better in society than an institution, then why not let them do that and have that right? So she wrote the opinion for that. And then FOTE versus LAS, which was talking as an environmental policy that she was essentially writing the opinion for, where the court ruled that citizens can have standing, meaning that they can sue over harm to their community, even if it doesn't affect their home. So, if people are struggling with pollution in the area, but they can't actually bring it back to their home or their personal life, but they know that like their parks or their rivers are being affected, then they can bring that to the court, and the court ruled on that. There's a lot of other things, John, that I could talk about. She was definitely a pro-abortion, politician in justice.
Yeah.
She was famous for that. I think she had opinions where she was in favor of partial birth abortion. She was vehemently in favor of like the women's right to choose, and that's really
Yeah.
where she gets that liberal moniker, that name. So definitely a friend to the left. Definitely someone who I would probably disagree with on on numerous issues. But at the same time, when you look at equality, I mean, like the women's rights to be able to go to colleges, especially military ones, we see now, women are proven that they can handle their own with almost any military profession you can think of, right? I think there was just a woman who made it through Ranger School and stuff like that. I mean, you can trace that back in many ways to RBG doing that, as kind of paving that way. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, just being an attorney, a judge, like there
Hmm.
wasn't that many women doing that. And she faced all kinds of
Exactly.
opposition, as she came up doing that, living in that time before it was normal. So a lot of people look up to her. It means a lot. But what are your initial thoughts? And then we can talk some more about it.
Yeah, I was going to touch on like what you were talking about, which is, when she was growing up and beginning to practice law, you knew it wasn't common for women to be in the legal system at all. I mean, if there were thousands of legal professionals, there were only like a couple hundred, maybe 100 or so women who were in it.
Yeah.
Uh, while she was practicing law, you had people essentially. The way that I've understood it is that the female gender was seen as the more delicate of the two, and it's supposed to be put on a pedestal. So we can't let women in their delicate nature be polluted by convenes of man and that sort of thing. And that's why we need to leave women out of, this job or that job or this occupation or the military and things like that. And Ruth was able to torpedo those arguments, especially with her career. And I think that's why she's just done so much to be able to show that that is a thing of the past. And that's why she's such a hero today. So, you talk about the cases. I do recall that she, even though she is pro-abortion, she wasn't really too keen on Roe versus Wade on the argument level. So she had very nuanced argument about abortion and not so much of it being more on the privacy issue, which is I think where Roe versus Wade really stood on, but more on the sense of like the 14th Amendment, equal rights, which has always been what she's been championing for her cases. I know that when she was writing briefs in like the 1970s, like that was just at the forefront of making sure that women have this equal opportunity as men and just pushing that forward. So I know that she lamented Roe versus Wade a little bit on that front. But I mean, her career has been, especially lately when she's seen not only herself become like the only woman for a bit, but also like an increasingly conservative court. And so she hasn't been this. I mean, she's been aggressive, but it hasn't been. I wouldn't say scathing necessarily. Like she's been called this dissenter, but someone who is going to understand the arguments, someone who is going to actually pause and think and try and engage in discourse
Yeah.
about it. I think that that's something that I definitely respect, and then that you and I can respect, Wes, on this show, which is if we dissent about something, I'm sure that we can find a way to rationally explain that and to be able to listen to the other side. So all those caused me to, I mean, give a great deal of respect for this woman's career.
I mean, there's all these photographs coming out of her and Scalia, right? And they had this friendship, even before the Supreme Court. And, you kind of see, I mean, they're opposite ends of the spectrum, and yet they can hang out, they can go to each other's houses, they can go
Yeah.
to functions together. And then obviously they disagree on the court, but, they still have that mutual respect. I want to show this. This is Trump's initial reaction when the media told him that she had passed away this week.
Oh
So
yeah.
take a look at that video.
Okay.
She just died? Wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life. I'm actually sad to hear that. I am sad to hear that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was Trump's reaction. You had Elton John there playing in the background after he just finished up, I think, like one of his rallies or whatever. And then the media, brought that to him. And I love that, man. I love the fact that even Trump, someone who has obviously like made his reputation on the right and, is a hard conservative in many ways or a hardliner on many right-wing values, can take a minute and is just like very human in that moment and very respectful and like, man, I am sorry to hear that. And I think that's the right attitude. I mean, yeah, I mean, like when you talk about Roe v. Wade, I think she actually believed that the issue of abortion wasn't decided democratically because there's still a big
Right.
split, and there still is today, right? It's a big split, and rather than allowing the states to decide or the country to have some determination, the court was kind of forcing that down people's
Mhm.
throats, and she didn't like that. She probably wanted, more people to come on the side of abortion, but at least she had that kind of respect for how it was done.
Mhm.
But really, I think what people are talking about is not so much that as they're talking about how she was a champion for for women's rights in many ways that conservatives agree with. I mean,
Exactly.
most conservatives agree that women can do the jobs that they want to do and should be given that opportunity, especially when it comes to, going to college and education or being an attorney and all that. And so, I mean, I think that's how she wants to be remembered, and that's certainly, the case.
Hmm.
So, I'm grateful to talk about that. At the same time, as we start to kind of shift, we look at, all right, so what does this mean? What does this mean for the courts? What does this mean for, the election coming up?
Hmm.
And I pose this question to our fans saying, should the next Supreme Court justice be chosen before or after the election? Because that really is the question, is who's going to decide
Sure.
and who's it going to be? So, let's look at responses, and then I'll kind of get your take on it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
John Mark said, elections have consequences. The American people spoke when they kept the Republicans in control of the Senate and voted Trump in as president. They should swiftly fill the seat before the election, in case the Supreme Court is needed in a ruling similar to the Bush v. Gore election. Fill the seat. So that's kind of what a lot of conservatives are saying, Republicans
Hmm.
are saying. Archer is saying Mitch McConnell delayed and prevented Obama from securing a Supreme Court justice for almost an entire year, right? It doesn't really matter, though. Whoever wins will secure another compliant justice like Kavanaugh or Gorsuch, who will favor corporate Americans' rights over individual liberties and freedoms, thus cementing total fascism within the United States. I think he's probably coming from more the libertarian type of view where, like you look at some of the rulings made by Scalia and others kind of in favor of businesses or corporations acting as people and things like that many individualists would oppose. And maybe he's
Yeah.
seeing, that it would be a similar judge. Roger says, yes, the only thing that would be unusual or unprecedented would be to wait for the election to fill the seat. The president and Senate have strong historical precedents to fill the seat now. If the Democrat Bolsheviks put on another clown show like they did for Kavanaugh, it will cost them the election.
Hmm.
And then one of our liberal followers was asking, do you remember the Republicans changing that precedent a few years ago? Which they certainly did. They,
Yeah.
were pushing through Kavanaugh, right? So you can see here. Here is Yana as well saying the Supreme Court justice should be chosen by the sitting president at the time. That should be the case now, as it should have been the case in 2016. But
Hmm.
we're excited to hear why this time is different. So, what do you think, John? What are your takes on that? Do you think it should be filled, or do you think that they should wait?
Let's think about some differences here between now and 2016. I mean, I do think that it should be filled, but um, in 2016 you had an open seat election. Obama couldn't run again, and in that case, it can be more of a toss up. And then, of course, the Senate was Republican at the time. Now you've got an incumbent. I can't remember the last time an incumbent lost. Actually, Wes, I don't know if you could tell me, but
An incumbent lost the presidential election.
yeah, I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, so you had H.W. Bush the
Let's
first.
see.
So he
I
lost
mean,
to Clinton.
yeah. So it's been a bit. I mean, it's been a bit since an incumbent lost. And right now, I know that a lot of the polls have been going in favor of Biden. I really think that this seat being vacated now is, in some ways, kind of a reset of the conversation for Trump and for Biden. And that way, it's going to be really, really good for Trump. Before you had the Democrats holding coronavirus and the way that he handled that over his head. Of course, the fragile economy. But now there's a new conversation happening, and that's going to be who's going to fill the seat. Trump has some names ready. Biden has none. The Senate is still Republican. So, like some of our commenters have been saying that with the incumbent being Republican, still having a good advantage, then the Senate being Republican, like it all kind of fits together that this isn't the first time that, you're going to fill a, Supreme Court justice seat during an election year. It's not the first time. It won't be the last. It's actually happened many times before. So I don't see it being this precedent that we have to wait.
Yeah.
But is there still that kind of semblance of hypocrisy? Yeah, you're still, pulling out quotes that were back in 2016 by McConnell and others and saying that we shouldn't, y'all shouldn't fill the seat because of this reason, that reason. And so, there is, there's this backward glance of like, okay, there is a little bit of hypocrisy here going on, but I don't see it as a way of blocking the seat.
Yeah, well, no, that's a good point because I mean, whether they feel it or they don't, which I think they will, but
Yep.
either way, it shifts the conversation in ways that are good for Trump in the reelection bid, right? Because so many conservatives have been led to vote for Trump and to support him because of the Supreme Court. I mean, that really was the argument back in 2016 was,
Right.
okay, this guy, he's not really a deep, or thoughtful Christian. Um, hasn't really practiced, conservatism or, been a Republican his whole life. However, he can win because he's tough and he will deliver conservative results, including justices to the Supreme
Justices, yeah.
Court. And then the result of that is Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, right? And so you see these justices, especially I would say in Kavanaugh's case, where they kind of like
Mm-hmm.
forced him through and were successful in that. And now they have a court that is decidedly more conservative. And I don't always agree with Gorsuch on his decisions or the way that he does them. We've talked about that on this show before. But I would certainly grant that he's far more conservative than obviously what we would have got under Clinton, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
in many cases, you've had, Republican presidents who appointed justices who ended up being more moderate to the left. But in Trump's
Mm-hmm.
case, we've gotten some of the most conservative justices. And now, in this case, you've got the opportunity to truly swing the court in a conservative direction when you take the most liberal member, the most longstanding liberal member, and then you replace that with, someone who is avowedly pro-life and anti-abortion. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
have fundamentally shifted the court for years to come, right? So that's a totally different conversation
Yeah.
than, say, talking about COVID, talking about the unemployment rate, talking about the jobs numbers, talking about, whatever issues that Biden wants to talk about. Is now you're shifting it back towards a reminder to conservatives of why they voted for Trump in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's I'm glad you hit on that because that is what I find. We even went with people that I was around back in 2016 where it was okay, who are you voting for? Well, I'll vote for Trump. Well, why is that? And like the most rational people that I ended up talking to who were Christian weren't voting for Trump because they were trying to delude themselves on his morals or his faith or any of those things. It was because of what he could do on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it kind of came down to.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. That my argument against that at the time was we don't know what Trump will do. Like the guy is just such a hot rod. Like will say anything. That I wasn't entirely convinced that he would fulfill that kind of promise. For all I knew, he could do something completely different. But you're right. He has proved himself, and he has that going for him, which is his advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see, man. It's going to be really interesting. And I think you're totally right when it comes to these debates. Biden's not going to fool anybody. He's not going to fool anybody in terms of the Supreme Court. Like we know that he's going to appoint someone, far to the left. He would appoint Obama to the court if he could, right? Like that's what he's looking to do. I think there was an article or a video of AOC recently talking about, hey, we can push Biden to the left once he's president, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So when you think about this country is increasingly shifting more towards a pro-life stance, increasingly it seems like every year there's more and more people who are frankly against what Ginsburg stood for in terms of abortion. You got to think that that's going to be pushing some of these people towards Trump's camp whenever they're about to make the decision here in a few weeks. So, I got to think of it, like as we pay our respects, obviously to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what she stood for. We can certainly pick out many things that she did that was amazing, for women's rights. But at the same time, this has got to be kind of a shock to the left and terrible timing. For them in terms of we saw before, and we did, our show with Three Founding Fathers talking about how right at this time in 2016, there was a massive shift towards Trump when he was running against Clinton that allowed him to close the gap and then, of course, win decisively. And I think because of this, you could see that same thing happen. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the debates. So those are coming up. We've got next Tuesday, I believe, is going to be the first debate. So I'm looking forward to
that'd be good to talk about.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We can get some reactions to it. We'll have some clips of it. Maybe even live stream it on our page. So for those following us, definitely recommend that you do that. Take a look at our YouTube, Breaking Conservative on YouTube. Obviously, we're on Facebook here. We're on Twitter. We've got our website, thebreakingconservative.com. You can follow us for that type of content. And then as these debates come up, John, we're really going to have to reattack, this hard and see exactly how this plays into it, because I think it certainly will. And there's going to be a lot of people paying attention to it. So anyway, man, like I said, I'm just happy making it through the end of the world here. Happy to have survived another day, and that my house is still standing. So thanks for joining me on this, and I'll give you the last word, buddy.
I just want to give a word to the people who are watching and commenting. If y'all want to leave a comment on I'll leave you with this about the court, which is, with Ruth, she wasn't a very private person necessarily. Like, she spoke a lot at rallies. She had documentaries made about her, films, books. She spoke frequently on talk shows and things like that. I'm wanting to know, and not for that reason, but for many reasons, we kind of perceive the court sometimes as being this puppet for the executive branch. I'd love to know what y'all think. Do y'all agree that maybe justices should stay more private with their views and be like their own community of scholars? Or do you think that they should be more vocal as time goes on? I'd love to know about that. Leave a comment after this video. That'd be great. We'd love to read it.
Sounds great. We'll definitely put that out there. Thanks, John. We'll see you next week.